The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi everyone, welcome to our webinar, Busting 7 Mobile Learning Myths. I am Pranjali. I am the Marketing Coordinator at Upside Learning and your host for the webinar. Before we get on with the webinar, let's take a quick look at Upside Learning. Upside Learning is one of the world's leading learning solution companies. We work with organizations of different sizes and types to improve performance. We offer a learning management system, Upside LMS, a revolutionary mobile learning platform, Upside To Go, custom learning solutions, and catalog courses. We have been recognized and awarded by Brandon Hall, trainingindustry.com, Deloitte, CLO, Apex, Red Herring, and have won 30 awards and recognitions till date. We are very active on our blog and constantly share our knowledge in the learning domain. We also release white papers and ebooks regularly. We have even partnered with some renowned organizations to aid our research endeavors. It's my pleasure to introduce you to the speakers, Amit Garg, Director of Custom Learning Solutions, and Abhijit Kadle, Senior Manager, Instructional Design. Amit and Abhijit, over to you.
Thanks, Pranjali.
Thank you, Pranjali.
Thank you for joining us today for this webinar on busting 7 mobile learning myths. A quick background about ourselves. I am one of the co-founders and a director of custom learning solutions at Upside Learning. I have spent a little over 12 years in the e-learning domain, essentially providing learning solutions to companies around the world in helping them improving productivity and performance. Prior to coming to e-learning, I spent a few years in automotive and process industries, largely in operations and sales functions. And that experience has been quite useful in understanding client situations and able to provide solutions that are more appropriate and more grounded, I hope. Qualifications-wise, professional education in engineering and chemical and an MBA in finance and sales, and also certificate in structural design that I picked up along the way when I got into the e-learning domain. Abhijit, would you want to introduce yourselves?
Thanks, Amit. My name is Abhijit. I'm the Senior Manager Instructional Design here at Upside Learning. I've been in computing and in multimedia development for about 15 years. Of those, I've spent about 12 in e-learning. Of those 12, again, I've spent about 10 in instructional design. I have a degree in engineering, mechanical engineering. I never really worked in that area though. I've been in computers all along. I'm a hardcore gamer and a very big Lego geek.
I can vouch for that. With the several models on your desk always. All right. Okay, so before we go along, here's a quick poll for you. I hope you can see the poll as it's made live for you. Are you using any mobile learning as of now? And the options that are there quite self-explanatory. Large amount of it, if you have done a few programs, kind of experienced, going along well, looking to really exploit the potential of mobile learning, or just about a little of mobile learning that you're doing, or thinking to start soon, or you have no plans as of now. Can you see the results? I'm sorry, on my machine I'm not able to see the results.
Oh, okay. Yes, I can. The results are quite interesting actually. 15% of the audience is already using mobile learning quite a bit. 27% is using it a little. 53%, which is a substantial number of individuals, are thinking to start soon, and about 5% have no plans as of now.
It's actually a decent percentage which is actually using it. All right, let me move on to what the industry research really says about where mobile learning is. And this is from the ASTD report on mobile learning, incidentally, that we sponsored, that was released in May 2012. The overriding theme was essentially that mobile learning is now off to a slow start. And in terms of numbers, they said about 28% of organizations were really offering any sort of mobile learning access to their employees. And the comment that they had, which was kind of summarizing the report, was despite the high correlation between learning effectiveness and market performance, over 2/3 of respondents from high-performing organizations report that their organizations are not doing any mobile learning, which is quite surprising, and especially given the fact that mobile learning as a term has been really around for many, many years. Similar report from the European domain or European market, where towards maturity, which focuses on doing that similar kind of research in Europe, indicated that about 39% of organizations were offering some mobile learning. So of course Europe seemingly a little ahead of the Americas over here. But again, these are not really large numbers, 28% or 39%. And I'm sure if you have been in the learning solutions domain or the learning space itself for some time, I'm sure you've heard of mobile learning at conferences at least maybe 5-7 years ago, if not earlier. I've been hearing mobile learning for almost 8-9 years now. So it's quite surprising that still there's very low adoption of mobile learning really in corporates around the world, and that too even in the Western world, which is usually more advanced and definitely is in this case. We think that one of the reasons, or some of the reasons which because of which this is happening, is because of a lot of myths that are floating around. The domain itself is quite complex and dynamic, and it is actually kind of, the situation becomes a little more tricky if there are myths that are floating around. And we believe that is one of the starting points. If we can bust those myths, then it's much easier for organizations to really evaluate mobile learning in the right perspective. So that's our attempt today, and we have 7 of those myths that we have listed. Before we jump into those, if we can get any of the myths that you are already aware of, maybe we'll uncover any other myth that we have not been able to capture in our presentation today. But anything that you believe, and you can type in your chat boxes, there are no options given for this obviously. Anything that you think your colleagues or peers, anyone else that you know of, has been thinking about mobile learning which is actually wrong. Once again, I'm not sure if Abhijit, you are able to see anything. I'm not able to see any of those myths coming up. Are you seeing some?
Actually, neither can I.
All right. Okay. I just hope people are able to type in. If there's a problem, do share with us, and we can possibly try and resolve that. Too many devices. So I can see in a window. Device diversity of mobile operating systems. Expensive. Phones distract kids. Fear of replacing face-to-face, hopefully, that's what's written. Hard to do because of different devices, etc. It's difficult to assess too many devices, opportunity for inappropriate sharing. True. Small fonts. Interesting. So there are, of course, quite a few things that have been brought in, and I think we will have a lot of these taken up directly in the 7 that we have listed. Some of them, might actually be covered indirectly today. I'm sorry. Okay, so let's get started with the myths that we have listed for you today. The first one that we have is mobile learning is just e-learning on the phone. So that's something that kind of happens a little naturally to everyone. They think that what they have been doing in e-learning format or delivering something on the PCs, etc., can be delivered on the phones as well, which in our opinion is quite wrong, and it is very similar to what some of the organizations, and I think there were many of them, where they did work on converting classroom training to e-learning, and I'm sure most of you have experienced some of that, and that was really bad e-learning because it did not take into account how e-learning was fundamentally different from what they were doing in classrooms or through manuals or something else. And we see a similar kind of mistake being made when people try and equate e-learning with m-learning. So the first thing is, or the first thought that anybody would get is just convert something that is available as e-learning and let's put it on iPhones or any other device, even larger screen ones. But that's a big mistake, and we'll probably bring that up in more detail in this webinar. But it's really about context in which mobile learning is used, and e-learning was really used in a very different context. So that is a crucial aspect that we need to understand, and don't really jump on to doing converting e-learning to m-learning. But more importantly, and which is why we kept this as the number 1 myth, was that e-learning really presents a much bigger potential, much bigger potential than what we have been able to achieve with e-learning. So if we get lost in this myth, we might actually just lose focus and may not really be able to achieve the potential that mobile learning really offers. Here's an interesting word or a word jumble that we picked up from Judy Brown's website. If you look at this, there are so many elements over here which probably would not occur to anyone as as a mobile learning component or something that you would typically associate with mobile learning. You have note-taking, you have coaching, you have alerts, you have polls. Of course, job aid is reasonably easier to possibly associate with mobile learning. But the potential is really huge, and that's why, as again Judy Brown suggests, we need to think outside the course. So the moment we are thinking it's just about e-learning on a phone, we are possibly equating it to be a course that is delivered on a mobile phone, maybe on a smaller screen size or shorter duration. But it's really much more than that.
It's quite interesting because this brings me to the next myth. What I'm going to do before that is to bring up 3 pictures on the screen and ask a question quickly. So can we please bring up the pictures? So look at each of these situations. Do you think m-learning is amenable to any of them? Let's move on to the next. I think the moment you look at those 3 situations, the thought that comes into your mind is, well, yes, in all situations, the individual can probably carry a mobile device, and they'll probably be able to access learning in some form or the other. It's important to understand that it's not just learning on the move. It's much, much more than that. It's more than learning on the move. We are seeing this paradigm shift in computing, right? And we're seeing it's mobile everything. It's mobile first now. So the mobile revolution is on. Gradually, we will see that personal computing as we know it is completely mobile. I think the first wave of devices has just passed us. Just day before yesterday, I think I was reading an article which said that there are 1 billion smartphones out there today. The key to M-learning, I think, is context. It's what drives the use of mobile technology. Similarly, I think that's what's going to drive the use of mobile learning. Smartphones are not devices with which you just make phone calls or send text messages. Having a connected personal computer that you carry around makes a world of a difference. It fundamentally changes what learning is possible and how to make that possible. I would recommend that we look at context very, very carefully. A few years ago, we used to say content is king. I think time has changed now, and with mobile learning in the picture, it is context is king. If you look at it, mobile learning is simply about augmentation. So I like to look at it in two ways. You can either augment performances with mobile learning or augment learning itself. So imagine a situation where you're doing instructor-led training or e-learning on the desktop of some sort, and you want to augment that. Mobile learning is a good way to do that. I'm going to show you 2 examples of how that is possible. So if we go to the next slide, this is something we created for a client, a British client. The whole idea behind this app was to provide a just-in-time tool to check for electrical safety compliance. So a typical use case would be an electrical contractor goes to one of their customers, and the customer has a particular requirement of wiring a particular part of their home or office. What would happen is the contractor would take some measurements and figure out what kind of circuit is necessary, and then they would make a quote based on that. But to be able to check whether that quote complied with safety norms, they had to go back to the office, look up a huge, actually there was physical standards that they needed to look up and to conform to. So what this app did was it replaced that entire cycle of having to go to look up the reference guide. So this is like a tool that lets them do the calculations on the fly. So this is a great example of how you can augment performance. So we actually augmented the performance and made it much more efficient. The second example that I'm about to show you is something that again we created for a customer in the UK. They were using a substantial amount of e-learning already, and they were seeking ways to augment it using mobile devices. So we actually provided them a solution that consists of 2 parts. There was a technology part which was about Upside to Go, and then we added mobile videos that are accessible on mobile devices which could be accessed through Upside to Go. So this is a good example of how you can augment learning itself. You need to be very imaginative about how you can augment learning. There are obviously many, many ways to do it. We can move on. The third myth I want to touch upon is the one that I hear the most, is that we need an app. As someone who interacts with a lot of customers over time, I found that there is this fallacy that an app can meet a learning requirement. An app is a technology, a way of doing things. It's not really a strategy to fix a learning problem or to assist in fixing a learning problem. There's just too much hype, I think, around is there an app for that? The proliferation of app ecosystems on iOS and Android, I think, are contributing to that. A lot of us use smartphones, so iOS and the Android markets have high visibility, and everyone in the organization obviously is interested. Let's have an app. In most contexts, I think, especially if you look at the mobile learning context, an app is really unnecessary. In most cases, a simple website, which is far more portable in the sense that it will work across devices, across platforms, can do the trick. Native apps are expensive and demanding. That's one of the downsides, as this graphic suggests. You need to develop multiple times for multiple platforms. Even recreating simple functionality that a website can offer very, very easily takes time and money when you try to do it with an app. So I really think you don't need an app. If this is a myth that I hear quite often. Perhaps the only situation, and I'm admitting there are situations where you would need an app, is that you need to use the hardware capabilities of a particular mobile device. For example, you want to use the accelerometer or the compass. The other factor maybe is if you want to store data on the device, because in a typical HTML-based website approach, that sort of data storage is not possible, at least not until HTML5 becomes a standard. Moving on. I think by 2016, mobile web will far outstrip the native web. And this is research from Nielsen, who suggests that by 2016, pretty much everything will be mobile, and there will be very, very few native apps around. So if you are thinking of an approach now, I wouldn't go with the app way. I would definitely go the mobile web way. Moving on.
I think it is important that we choose the way that we want to go between those apps. Mobile apps do look like the future, but yes, as Abhijit was talking, there would be certain situations in which you might just want to do a native app, which is useful maybe this year or next. But after that, yes, you might start moving into mobile apps, for pretty much everything. We get into the fourth myth now, which is essentially create once and deliver on all sorts of devices. And quite frankly, some of the tool vendors have been perpetuating this quite a bit. And the clients have themselves been starting to think, why not deliver the e-learning on iPad as well? Which is a good thought, but does it really help in a particular objective? Yes, if there is some information that is equally good to be accessed through PCs and mobile devices, great. Otherwise, no. So I think there are three aspects that we need to possibly think about, when we are having this thought where we need to create something which needs to go on all kinds of devices. The first one is context. Is that going to work on each of those contexts in which the learners or staff are going to access that information or material? A performance support thing will not work as an e-learning program, and a half-an-hour e-learning program will probably not work on a small screen iPhone or similar devices. So the need with which, and Abhijit talked about it, it's all about context, especially for mobile learning. But you would still have sometimes need where you say, I would possibly create this once and deliver on multiple things. The second thing that will come in is technology, which is Flash versus HTML5 is really the debate that's been on. In a way, the debate is closed. HTML5 is definitely the long-term winner. It is evolving, but at the same time, it is not really at a stage where it can offer you the same kind of user experience that Flash is still capable of delivering. So if you are doing just e-learning and the desire to put it on an iPad or on smaller devices is a good to have thing, you may not want to compromise on the user experience by switching to HTML5 for all of your programs. Some of them can still go into your existing structures, etc., which are essentially based on Flash. The third element of this particular bit is design, as in how to really go about and do this. So it's important to understand what would be the option when you essentially go with even HTML5. Responsive design is something that's been around for a few years as a concept. It's been used for websites. So responsive web design is something that's kind of attracted designers to make sure that they can make things available in interesting and useful manner on larger screens and smaller screens as well. Here's an example that I have. This is a site called forefathers.com. So if you see it on your desktops, you'll see something like this. If you were to kind of manually play with your window size and just reduce the width of the window, you will see something like this, which is essentially kind of creating an environment of your phone, kind of width sizes that you would get on your phones. If you notice, the menu has become vertical instead of horizontal. Some of the elements also go away. I have another screenshot, which is what you see on the mobile if you scroll down. So if you see the fourth menu item and after that, you directly go to the text. So there is a, the bold text has gone away, the image has gone away, etc. So there are things that are getting, that are disappearing as well. And so what's happening is when you are squeezing the size, the width, the menu structure is changing. Sometimes fonts can change, font sizes can change, placement of items can change, and some items can actually vanish. So they will not appear on the mobile phone at all. If you were to apply this to e-learning, or have e-learning and m-learning both created with this responsive design concept, I think the challenge is not really technology, because you're seeing examples which can possibly do that. The challenge is really in instructional design, in making both the mobile variant and the desktop variant interesting, meeting certain learning objectives that you have in mind, and which could be really a challenge if the mobile one is really focused on performance support and those kind of things. So, but yes, options are available. If you really want to create once and deliver on all devices, responsive design could be an option. But as of now, you have to really apply certain principles which based on context, whether it is really going to be useful for you, which technology do you want to go with. Is it only e-learning that you're going to do? Then possibly stick with Flash. And then if you really think you want to do that and you have to do it, responsive design is the best solution as of now. The next myth that we have is essentially on whether we need tracking or not. Essentially a lot of people have been thinking that we do need tracking of everything that we are doing on mobile devices. Let me bring in a few interesting bits of information here. This first one is from a research conducted by Dr. Robert Kelly in Carnegie Mellon University, where he set out to identify what percentage of knowledge is needed to be memorized by your staff to do their job roles productively. In 1986, that figure was at 75, came down to about 15-20% in 97, and became about 8 to 10% in 2006. The information overload is something that we are all aware of. The shelf life of information itself, we are all very well aware of. It's essentially a reflection of how much we can handle in our minds and memorize, and how much is really required given the nature of change of information itself. Now, in this situation, just to draw conclusions from this fact, what it means is that you need to be equipping your workforce to be able to find the information that they need to do their jobs rather than memorize it. And if you're not wanting them to memorize, the need for tracking, and which typically translates to assessing and how much did they score, etc., might just go down dramatically. There's another bit of interesting piece of information, and this comes from Person, from one of their posts, I think both on their blog as well as on LinkedIn. And this is a model that they essentially are kind of advocating. If you see the gray area of traditional learning, we're all kind of familiar from our own experiences and from some research that proves that any training that you do in a classroom situation or a formal learning scenario might just start losing, or you might just start losing that information in a few days' time if you're not implementing that or applying it to your job situation. The way that you can get past that is to bring in other elements which support continuous learning, and communities of practice, social learning, social networking is mentioned here. Mobile learning are some of those elements which can possibly bring in that continuous learning environment in the workplace. Once again, if you're doing those, you'll have to see what kind of tracking is really required. If you're doing informal learning, or if you're supporting informal learning, it's quite hard to get informal learning done in any case. But if you're supporting informal learning, you're creating an environment which kind of creates a culture for that kind of learning, the tracking parameters will change dramatically. This is a very simplified vision of the kind of learning that will happen in organizations and amount of e-learning, or let's say trackable learning, that will be there as part of it. So, we discussed about m-learning being mobile everything or much more than just courses, and there are so many other things that you would be doing with mobiles. We firmly believe that a lot of learning will move to mobile devices in times to come, and there are very strong reasons for that. In fact, I and Abhijit had a webinar a couple of months ago which was essentially on drivers of mobile learning, that you can't escape mobile learning, and we do believe that most of it will shift to mobile devices of various sizes. Now, if that's the situation, and if you are going to do much more than just courses, again, the component that you can track or would want to track in an effective manner might just be very less. So again, from a slightly longer term perspective, you might have less relevance of tracking when it comes to mobile learning. But again, I think we're also moving in a direction where we're creating systems which would help us track things, and I'll come to that. Before that, we do realize that in some cases you will need tracking, which is if you are especially delivering compliance or some sort of regulatory material to your audiences. So in those cases, people have tried implementing SCORM on the mobile solutions, but SCORM has been a little difficult to implement on mobile devices, largely because of two key reasons. One, browsers don't allow on mobile devices in most cases to open up a new window or have a frame set, which makes it very difficult to communicate in a way that SCORM wants. So they have created some sort of wrappers around the browsers or instantiated browsers inside apps to store that data and pass it on. And a bigger problem has been when you go offline. So again, you need a wrapper which can store some information and then communicate back to whichever servers it needs to go to or systems it needs to go to when you are connected again. So, but SCORM has been really, it was not designed for mobile devices, it was designed with PCs in mind, and hence there were shortcomings in SCORM the way it could help tracking. But I think as we go along, TinCan, which is evolving nicely, and it aims to really create a personal repository of learning achievements and instances for each individual, would actually replace SCORM and would help us track a fair amount of things that people are doing. But for today, I think tracking may not be as huge a requirement, because if it is only compliance that you really want to track effectively today, then they may not be the first things that you would want to do when you are doing mobile learning in any case, because you need to set that culture, you need to start getting comfortable. Here's an example from Qualcomm, which has been a kind of a pioneer in mobile learning space, and this image I picked up from the webinar that they participated in along with ASTD, which was on the mobile learning report that we sponsored. And they talked about not having any sort of tracking for their mobile learning initiatives. Only tracking that they do is kind of a website tracking that you would do. How many visitors came? Are the hits to our mobile portals increasing? Are there assets which are more popular and less popular? Things like that which are much easier to do. But they're not really going into who has completed assignments and who has passed and what are the scores and those kind of things. So I think there is a case to be made against too much of tracking in mobile learning, at least to begin with.
So this brings us to our next poll. I wanted to ask all the audience here, does the phone you use have a password, a gesture or a voice phrase that you use to secure it? You can see it up on your screen, so please answer that. Okay, we'll wait a few more seconds and then close the poll. Right. So 70% of our audience uses some sort of password protection for their phone, while 30% of the individuals don't. This is quite an interesting take. I actually thought it would be the other way around, because looking around at the phones in the office here, I find most people don't lock their phones. So I'm quite happy to see that we have a security conscious audience. Can we go back to the slides, please? So this actually brings me to the sixth myth. This is a very commonly heard myth, that there is no proper security. So right at the outset, I'd like to say that while we are busting this myth, there is some validity in it. So it's valid to an extent. But in the end, it is a non-myth. The security issues with the phones are associated with the common risk of them being stolen or lost. I personally have lost a device, and I know the agony that one goes through when you lose a device, because you have contacts, pictures, and a whole lot of sensitive information on it. Personal information. But if you're also using this information, also using the phone for company purposes, then there is a likelihood that you'll also have confidential company-related information on it. Currently, there are many levels of protection that your typical phone offers. Simple password protection, the kind that most of us in the audience use. More advanced protection in the form of encryption, which requires a significant amount of computing power, of course. And the last, I think, more recent option that's available for security is to be able to do what are called remote data wipes. In a remote data wipe, what can be done is that if you lose a phone or your phone is stolen, you can call up the provider, and the provider can actually remotely wipe your phone. So any sensitive data that may be on the phone will be erased. One major issue I think companies have is they want to always manage their assets. They want to manage devices, even if individuals are bringing those devices into the workplace. Currently, there are two types of solutions that are available. I've included this in security because to an extent they enable you to secure the devices that your employees are using. So they're called mobile asset management systems and mobile device management systems. I believe there is also a cloud-based solution out there, and eventually we'll be seeing more and more of these. So these are two words that, or rather acronyms that you will hear more and more of. So keep those in mind, MAM and MDM. Moving on. The seventh and last myth, and I think this is truly the biggest myth, by far the biggest myth that we've seen, is that it's not the right time yet to do mobile learning. A lot of the myths that people talked about typed into the chat window just moments ago. Individuals bring their own devices, there's no standardization, there's multiple operating systems, multiple screen sizes, multiple platforms. The usage patterns amongst individuals vary. So if you put all of these together, it seems like a very difficult thing to address. But that's not really the case, as Amit is about to tell us.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things about this particular uh, myth is to realize that you know what I actually read somewhere is it's never too late to be early, and it kind of applies to the mobile learning domain very well. Now, what people are really grappling with is the field is dynamic. The kind of elements change almost on a monthly, if not weekly basis as yet. But yeah, I mean, you have new devices, new things being rolled out, technology, the bandwidth is being upgraded, data plans are changing. I mean, I'm quite happily surprised to see some free Wi-Fi initiatives happening. Sorry, and we would probably see more seamless handshakes between data providers, where you can, with one single subscription, you can possibly switch from one provider to another and just feel as if you have Wi-Fi available almost everywhere. I mean, there are free Wi-Fi zones available in London now from O2. I read a report about Chicago Council planning some kind of Wi-Fi available in parks and other public areas for free. So, there are changes that are happening almost on a very, very regular basis. So, mobile learning strategy, if that's what you are trying to develop before you begin with mobile learning, then that is something which is more of a moving target, really. I mean, you decide on something and the situation will change within 3 to 6 months time, and your strategy is already out of date a little bit, if not too much. But what we are kind of thinking is that you may be one step behind, or you should be one step behind rather than 5 steps. So while the field is evolving, while the target is really moving, if you don't make a beginning, the gap is only going to increase. It's almost like getting on an escalator. We were talking earlier. I think that's a good analogy. If mobile learning is like an escalator, and if you don't get onto it, you would stay where you are. So unless you make a beginning, however small, and we've seen some great success stories of this kind where people have just gone ahead and implemented, let's say, their sales support website, and implemented in a way that it is available on the mobile phones in a easy to search and user-friendly manner on mobile phones. And that has itself created demand for more. And the stories have traveled from sales to other functions, and they've started demanding, and it's become a push from your staff or from that organization staff, rather than creating a business case and going to the top management and getting an approval to do something. Because here is the critical thing with mobile learning. For all these years, we have been doing training in various formats. Unfortunately, the link between training and actual performance is quite fuzzy and long drawn, and it's very difficult to really prove what has impacted business performance to what extent. It's very difficult to isolate other factors. But with mobile learning, and with special emphasis on performance support and just-in-time access to information to get your jobs done better, faster, you are looking at a more direct relation between what you do with mobile devices, and all of it cannot be termed as learning. Some of them is pure performance support or just making it available. But then what you do with mobile devices might just have a very direct relation with performance. And that's where it is much easier to establish the business case, but you have to have a few case studies. You have to do a few things. You have to get some of your people behind this initiative. I think the sales team has been usually the go-to team for implementing mobile learning in most organizations. They are usually, almost everyone in the sales team is traveling. They don't have time to really sit down and have training in classrooms and other things. They need information just when it changes. The speed of response has to be fantastic. So they are just kind of ready, and we are seeing that happening in most organizations where sales teams are adopting mobile learning first. So you might want to begin with that, use that as an experience, learn from it, and grow your own expertise in implementing mobile learning in your place, and that will help you create a better strategy. Going for a strategy before doing anything might just be something that you would continue to think about but not be able to implement. Abhi?
Yeah, Amit makes a really interesting point, about not wanting to get left behind. Right at the beginning of this webinar, we mentioned the Towards Maturity report, in which we found that 39% of organizations already offer M-learning in some form or the other. Another factor I think that should drive you towards mobile learning is the influx of the millennials. I know there's been a lot of back and forth about whether millennials use technology differently from baby boomers and Generation Xers. The fact is that yes, they do, because they are technology natives. They've been using technology all their lives, and they're coming into the workplace with sophisticated mobile devices. And it would be a shame if we don't use that familiarity and nativity with mobile devices for their own betterment. So if I were to kind of summate what we talked about this particular myth, is that it's good to learn from the early adopters, because they've already been significant amount of adoption in that space. You can learn what works and what doesn't and put your pan into play. Like I mentioned before, mobile is about context. So more than content, you should be thinking about context. And as soon as L&D starts incorporating mobile in the mix, and you start experimenting with it, that's the only way forward. Amit?
I think that kind of brings us to the end of our 7 myths. Just one point that I wanted to mention about the millennials is that they see information and information systems, the way you access things, who creates it, when is it available, etc., in a very different way from the previous generations. Some of the things that there is an immediate requirement of feedback that they have. So they post something on Facebook or any other network, and they know that somebody is going to respond. And similar is the expectation that they'll bring to the workplace. So they will say, wherever they are from their mobile phone, they'll say, oh, anybody knows about this? And they're probably expecting, of course, in a reasonable size organization, they're expecting somebody will respond, somebody will help, somebody will help them find the right information, etc. So I think they are bringing different set of expectations. And as Abhijit was mentioning, it will be a shame if we can't leverage this new way of dealing with information. So that's really the end of our 7 myths that we wanted to present. We would like to invite any questions, and meanwhile I'll just put up a few other webinars that are coming up in the future. One of them has a date that's been finalized, the others not so far. But yeah, we're really open for any questions now. And I'm struggling to have the chat window as well as my slides up, so here we are. I'm reading one of the questions from Ben. What do you say to executives who might demand an ROI if tracking isn't part of the equation? How do you measure a return on investment? Great question, Ben. And essentially, I think the response to that would be in an example that we were trying to share earlier, which was about beginning small, trying to create some sort of traction. If let's say you begin with sales teams and they say, yes, this is something which is working for us, which is helping us and do this X, Y, Z, that builds a lot of confidence in other teams as well as the heads of those teams. And I think there's no better proof of ROI, because it's really difficult. I'm sure you've done some ROI calculations on other e-learning or other training programs, and believe me, I think it's difficult. It's very difficult to single out one training program and say this program delivered so much ROI. So I think in our experience, the ROI in this case is more directly visible when your people are beginning to say, yes, we like this solution, it is helping us. Okay. Any other questions that you would like us to answer today? Well, myths that we have focused on are largely for the adult audiences. Do you think the myths would be different in a school situation? Thanks, Nicole. Myths for the school, frankly, we'll have to give it a thought because, quite frankly, we focus largely on the workplace learning solutions domain. So, yeah, we haven't really thought like. But again, I think we've been reading few articles where the uptake of mobile learning and the interest in the academia is actually much higher than what it is in the corporate sector as of now. You know, they have made good progress in implementing some sort of mobile learning solutions in a lot of schools. But myths, I think one of that was mentioned earlier, which is it's kind of a time waster for kids. They can go on to different kinds of sites, etc. Another one that I've heard is it would kind of make the teacher's job difficult. Again, probably coming from the same myth that it distracts. But I've also seen reports, and one of them was actually doing rounds on Twitter last week, which is proof that iPads have helped results in classrooms. I'll try and pull that out and share it on our blog sometime. I understand. Here's a comment from on providing some sort of 12-hour learning to get credits for professionals, lawyers, for example. How can you manage without tracking? Absolutely. I mean, there is no question of not tracking when you are looking at getting certifications or credits for the work that they're doing. But again, is that really to be done on mobile devices? You would have to really question that. I mean, can that be done on phones, for instance? I would still understand if you are trying to do it on, let's say, the iPads, and the audience, you know, that will go home, you know, they would pull out their personal iPads, watching TV and doing that program simultaneously. I would understand. Or if they travel a lot and they carry their iPads, they would want to do it. Then also it's absolutely fine. But if they're doing on mobile devices, as in mobile phones, you may not want to do a 12-hour program on mobile phones for sure. But yes, if you're doing it on iPads and other things, you would definitely need some sort of an app which can help you track everything that they're doing. Yes, the presentation will be available. It will be posted both on SlideShare as well as on our blog, and hopefully the recording of the session will also be available in a couple of days' time. Larry is asking how are LMSs coming along for mobile learning. Quite interestingly, a lot of them have started including components of mobile learning. And the first place for most LMSs to start has been making the LMS itself available on devices like iPad. Some of them have gone ahead and made it available even on the mobile devices, which is the smartphones and the smaller screen phones, essentially. The challenge, though, is that you will need to have content which you can deliver through those LMSs. So, yes, I think there is progress. LMSs are beginning to implement mobile access. Quite a few of them have actually implemented. There's also a direction that some of them have taken, like us have taken, our system, which is Upside LMS, is to build a native app which is available on iPhones, Blackberries, and Androids, and link into the backend with the LMS, so we can give a good experience and also provide offline availability of material. So if somebody wants to do just-in-time, revision or see a video or troubleshooting document, they can access it just when they need it, even if there is no network. So there are essentially two different philosophies with which people are implementing that. But yes, there is significant progress happening on LMSs to become mobile compatible. That's interesting. Farhan, you say that the universities are not buying the idea of e-learning, let alone m-learning. Reason being, teachers feel that they'll be replaced. The reason is real. Whatever little I get to browse the web, I find a lot of colleges and universities are implementing something on mobile devices, and a lot of them have actually bought iPads. That was the first one to come on the market. We might just see other tablets getting into universities and colleges, but iPads have really made quite good inroads into universities and colleges. And again, going by research that has been coming out, it seems that it has made a positive impact in places that have been been at the forefront of adopting some of these mobile technologies. All right. Any other questions? I think we're just coming to the end of our 1 hour time slot. So if there's none, we'd like to thank you again. Thank you for joining for this webinar. I hope you found it useful. Have a good day, evening, night, wherever you are. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.